company were allowed to live there. So I've heard some stories of, teenagers, for example, who would refuse to work in the field, and the family was evicted from the housing, even though the father was an employee. So they were tough times.
Is that mostly sugar?
I think that there was everything. There were,
Well, it wasn't
and
sugar
most of
really
the
didn't come on
tomatoes.
a large-scale basis until the Cubans came in the early 60s. It was mostly vegetable farming in the area around, let's say, out the military trail, or a lot of cattle, dairies, and that sort of thing, but not really
Boutwell
sugar.
Road had a dairy, right?
Boutwell,
There
of course.
were chicken farms, there were eggplant and tomatoes and peppers.
Well, and there were also pineapples here too. There was a barge that pulled, or a boat that pulled up out here, and people rowed out from Lake Worth Lagoon to buy pineapples from that boat. I think in Palm Beach County, people think that Murakami was the pineapple grower for the area, but he was probably the most successful pineapple grower, because the pineapple growers in Lake Worth were not that successful, because pineapples have a cup, and if sand gets into them, then you need to wash it out. They didn't have irrigation, and sand would blow into them, and so they didn't grow that successfully.
We used to live out on Snowden Drive, and pineapple came up spontaneously one year. So there was something in the ground. Please. I don't know exactly where it was located. We know from this article that appeared in the Plan Journal in Indianapolis that they were boasting about their school in Lake Worth, but I don't know the exact location right now. It's in a two-story building.
You know why you're serving mango trees in this area?
Well, she asked why there are so many mango trees in the area. They certainly grew mangroves during this homestead period as an export item they could ship up north. But specifically why the mango trees are here now.
Yeah, and we did a little presentation at the Rare Food Council about agriculture in Palm Beach County. We focused a lot on Lake Worth in doing that. And the Lake Worth community here, and the people who came here planted fruit trees first before they built their homes. So that was their value. And they were really trying to grow tomatoes. There was a tomato farm that actually made $200 one year. That was like in 1836, I think. But the difficulty they had with growing fruit or tomatoes was the market was up at Fort Pierce, and there weren't any roads going up to Fort Pierce to get their fruit to market. So sometimes they would take it out and try and take it up on a barge or a boat to Fort Pierce. So the difficulty was getting it to market. And then in 1938 and 39, there were the freezes, and Flagler actually came to the rescue of Lake Worth farmers because he asked them to plant pineapples and fruit trees along the railroad tracks, which were cleared, but also because he wanted to have his passengers see paradise out of the window. And it really changed the economy from an agricultural economy to a tourist economy, because a lot of those farmers took their barns and turned them into guest houses, and started growing fruit for the tourist economy rather than growing fruit or vegetables to ship to another place and sell it. So it became a tourist economy.
Of course, the Breakers was the terminus for the first. For the Flagler Railroad at first. Please.
I wanted to ask about you were talking about the discrimination or just in Lake Worth. Was that atypical of this area? In other words, was West Palm Beach or Boynton Beach or the other communities?
A really good question. At the time that the city was established by 1913, when the charter was written, it was certainly typical to have racial segregation in every community. But West Palm Beach had a black residential area from the beginning, as did Delray and many of the others. What was unique about Lantana and Lake Worth is that they promoted themselves as white-only communities. And they really had no, designated Negro district at first. Janet, were you
Just to
gonna
kind of back up what you said and what you said, Ted, I'm from the Boynton and then Lantana area, but basically when the European settlers came here, they weren't familiar with the land, so the black settlers actually taught them how to farm and how to adapt to the
especially in the
climate
Boynton area, there was
and
a whole
everything. And
community
then when
of
land became more valuable
earlier settlers,
and the
yeah.
city started to put up these charters, then all of a sudden they wanted them out, so.
Same thing happened in Palm Beach, of course, with the sticks. And many other stories to be told.
I was at the museum on Hutchinson Island Museum, and I suspect that maybe the mangoes came the same way the coconuts came. There were a lot of shipwrecks. A lot of the early homes were built with planks from old ships, and salvaging ships was a big industry at one time.
Well, the mango came because of Elbridge Gale. The Department of Agriculture sent him and several of the Lake Worth settlers mango sprouts from India to see if they would grow here. And it was only Reverend Gale, who was a retired horticulturist from Kansas, who got his to grow, and he discovered what became known as the Hayden mango, rather than the turpentine mango. If the old Floridians know, they called it the Mulgoba mango. And so then they would sell, and they can only be raised from sprouts. You can't, or from cuttings. They have to be grafted onto rootstock, and that's what he worked on and discovered. So then people would sell that very nice, delicious mango that was the main variety for many years. I don't know if it is anymore.
When was that?
He was very early. This is pre-1900. He was one of the first settlers in what became Northwood, and now it's still called Northwood, but there's no wood left. And, but Mangonia is where it got its name because of his son and him.
Yeah, we don't think of Palm Beach
Yeah.
County as an agricultural county, but it was. Until fairly recent times.
And to add to that mango story, there's Zill's Nursery in Boynton Beach, and they started propagating mangoes, and in fact there are more varieties of mangoes that have come out of Palm Beach County than any place in the world, even though mangoes are originally from India. But Indians actually come here to Palm Beach County and to Zill's Nursery to purchase mangoes because more have been developed.
Well, this has been a great experience for me. I really enjoyed all the research, and can't thank Ginger and Janet enough for their support of the project, and they're working on half a dozen new books and other projects, right? So we hope now.
I think there's a movie in that book.
Many things keep coming up, even since the publication of the book. One interesting thing was that one of the Pierce girls, who saw the Pierce family here, her memoir was recently published by the Palm Beach Historical Society, and she talks about visiting with Fanny James as a young girl in their tiny little house. And she says Fanny told her that she was also part American Indian, which of course was very typical for slaves of that period. So Fanny apparently had European, African, and Native American blood. What a fitting symbol for part of
But she had a little Asian blood, she'd be Tiger Woods.
exactly. So what a fitting symbol for
Did
Lake
you see
Worth
the
as a town.
article in the Post this week and last week, the series on the early settlers that trekked from the West Coast through the Everglades to come here? Said there was a second installment today on it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.